So in lesson 10.6, we are going to learn about ways length is measured. Length is how long something is. For example, I have this notebook and I want to know how long this notebook is. So I'm going to use a ruler to measure the length. So I'm going to use the ruler provided for me in the picture here in your book to measure or record the length of different objects. So here we're going to learn how 1 inch is different from half an inch and how big a or how long 2 inches is. Well done, Yara. And we are going to learn how we can estimate between these different lengths. So in example 1, we have a glue stick that is measured here in the picture of the ruler. So in the first example, we're measuring a glue stick and we're using an inches ruler. So if you have an inches ruler, it's preferred, but you can use a centimeter ruler if you don't have inches. So for the first one, the first thing you need to do when you measure any type of object, the beginning of object, you need to be sure that it's next to 0. So always start measuring with 0. So the object needs to start at 0 to find an accurate number. So here, notice how it's closer to 2. And this line is bigger or longer than the ones next to it because it represents 0. So this one represents 0.5 or half. And also the one in the middle represents 1.5. Again, in the middle, 2.5. So here, notice how the glue stick is very close to 2.5. That's why we're going to estimate that the measurement of the length or the length of the glue stick is 2.5, and the unit here is inches. So line up the left of the glue stick with 0 mark. So you always need to be sure that the 0 mark is the beginning of the object to know exactly how long it is. And the end of it is half-inch marks for. So the right end of the glue stick, which is this end, is between the half-inch marks of 2 numbers. And these numbers are 2 and 3. The mark that is closest to the right end of the glue stick is 4, and we need to find how many inches. So the mark that is closest to the right end of the glue sticks is for 2.5 inches. So the length of the glue stick to the nearest half-inch is 2.5. So because I said to the nearest half-inch, I can write 2.5 because the question here asks for nearest half-inch. If the question asked us for nearest inch, then we can estimate 2.5 and round it up to, or we don't need to round it up, we just need to look at the ruler, and the ruler is the closest to 2. So if they ask us nearest inch, we will write 2 inches. But if they ask us nearest half inch, we will write 2.5. Someone's writing here in the chat box. So for the second one, we are measuring a paper clip. Notice how, again, the paper clip starts at 0 inches because we need to make sure the measurement is accurate. And here it's closer to a 4th. Why am I saying 4th? Because in each, for example, from 0 to 1, I have 4 parts. I have 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? So, for example, 0 over 4, and here it's 1 over 4. And please write this so you can go back to it and understand how to do it when you do the homework. 2 over 4, which is 2/4, and 3/4. And 1 is also the same as 4/4. 4/4. Or a different way to write this is the next one is 1.25, because 25 is the same as quarter. 1.25, I have to add 25 each time. So 25 plus 25 is 50, which is another way of saying 1.5 or 1.50. And again, 150 or 50 plus 25 is 75. And 75 plus 25 is 100. That's why I'm going to have a new number over here. Okay, so these are different ways of finding the fourth. But if the fractions is easier for you, you can use the fractions, because we studied the fractions recently. So notice how the paper clip starts at 0 and it ends here. I'm going to use a different color. So the end of the paper clip is very close to 1.7, and 1.7 can also be a different fraction, which is, so 4, 5, 6, 7. So 1.7 can be 7 over 8. Sorry, 7 over 4. So it's 7/4, because the fourth will stay the same because we have only 4 parts. So it's between two numbers. It's between 1 and 2. So I'm going to write 1 and 2. The mark that is closest to the right end of the paper clip is for 7/4 inches. So the length of the paper clip to the nearest 4th inch is 7/4. And if you guys are unsure how to find the fraction, you can simply add 1/4 every time. So 2, if I continue, is going to be 8/4, because I'm only adding 1/4 every time. This is going to be 9/4. Okay, my handwriting isn't clear in that one. I'm going to repeat it. So this is going to be 9/4, 10/4, 11/4, 12/4. And to make sure that your answer is correct, if you're not sure if 12/4 fraction is equal to 3, you can do 12 divided by 4, and 12 divided by 4 is 3, and that's how you know that the fraction is correct. Okay, so before I move on to the next part, does anyone have any questions about these examples? Okay, so for this example, I'm going to use a number line, or a different way of showing a fraction strip, to measure the length of 10 crayons. So what I'm going to use here is I'm going to measure a pen, because I don't have crayons near me right now, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to measure different pens, okay? So here, I'm going to show you guys a ruler, your eraser, whatever stationery you have around you, And for my ruler, I'm going to use my measuring tape because it also has measurements in inches, if you guys can see it. So the point of this is to use the measurements or find the lengths of different crayons. And then I'm going to write X, like this one, a mark, to show that I have a lot of these crayons. So what I'm going to use here is I'm going to use the crayons that I have to make some measurements. So for example, I'm going to start at 0, and when you start measuring, you need to make sure that you are always starting at 0. So you always have to start at 0. I'm going to put 0 next to the beginning of the crayon and measure it. And I see here that it's very close to 2.5. So because it's close to 2.5, I'm going to put an X here. Okay. The next one I'm going to do, I want someone to try to look at it and read it to me. Let me use one with a different length. Who here can? Yusuf, can you see me?
What?
Can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay. I want you to try to see if you can see the measurement of this. So I have here an orange crayon, and it's next to what whole number?
2.
It's next to 2. And remember, 2 is 8/4. So I have another fourth here that is close to it. So what's after 8/4?
8/4.
8 plus 1?
2 9.
9/4. So instead of saying 9/4, I can also say 2 and 1/4, right? I can say 2 and 1/4. So I don't have 2 and 1/4 here, but the closest thing I have to 2 and 1/4 is 2. So I'm going to put a mark on 2. Okay, thank you, Yusuf, for helping with this one. And I want you guys to use different stationery to do it yourself. Rena, did you start doing it? Rinad, I have here another crayon, and I want you to look at the measurements that I have here. So for example, I'm going to put it next to 0 first, and I want you to look at the number. Can you see it?
Yeah.
What's the number close to the end?
1.
1. So the measurement for this one is 1 inch. So it is 1 inches long. Thank you, Rinad. Zaina, do you want to help me with the next one?
Why not?
So I'm going to put my crayon here next to 0. And I'm going to make it close to 0 as much as I can. And notice here where my crayon is ending. So it's before 2. What do you think? What's the number here?
1.
In the middle. So it's exactly between 1 and 2. So that means it's?
1.5.
Yes, it's 1.5. Excellent. So my measurement here is 1.5. Okay, so these are a few examples of how to measure. I'm using a measurement tape here that is with inches. So look here, it says IN. If it says IN, that means it's inches. And you can use a ruler as well. So I'm going to write a pattern here. Describe any pattern. So the pattern that I'm seeing here is that I have your pattern can be different. So I have crayons that have or with different lengths, because they are all different in length. Okay, so this can be my answer. And if you have a different answer, you can take a picture of it and send it to me. If you're using, for example, pencils, they might be longer than crayons, so your answers might be a little different. Or if you're using erasers, they might be shorter than crayons. So this is just to show how measuring can help us know how long something is. I'm going to do 2 more examples, and then I'm going to give you 10 minutes to do the next page independently. So I want to measure the length to the nearest ½ inch, and to the nearest ½ inch means that my answer should have a half in it. So it should have a half in it. And the question here is the key closest to 1½ inches, 2 inches, or 2½ inches. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use my measuring tape or a ruler to measure the key. So I'm going to put the 0 here and see where the key is going to end. So put the 0 next to the line. And for me, it's very close to 2 inches. Did anyone else measure it? Hadiya, did you measure the key? Do you have a ruler?
Yeah, but it's broken.
Does it start at 0? Do you see a 0, or is the 0 not in your ruler? Look at your ruler. Do you have a 0?
No.
Okay, no worries. But if you don't have a 0, for example, you can start at 1, and then when you find the final answer, you can subtract by 1, for example.
Teacher, I don't have 1 and 2. I just then 4.
Okay, so you can start at 4 and imagine it's a 0, and then, for example, if the object ends at 7, you need to do -4 to find the answer, okay?
Yes, it's 2. It's like 2½ or 2.
Was it closer to 2?
No, it's closest to 2½.
Really? When I measured it, it was exactly at 2. It was exactly at 2. Try again. Inches. Make sure you're using the inches side.
Okay.
So when you use the inches side as that, what is it closer to?
2.
And you started 0 here on this side, right?
Wait. Yes.
Okay, so you have a similar answer. That's a good sign. Okay, so the next part, I'm going to go to the next part, and we have 8 minutes left. So you need to measure here to the nearest 4th inch. Nearest 4th inch means that you will have 4 in your denominator. So please use your ruler to measure the pencil that you have here.
Oh my gosh.
So for number 2, what's the measurement that you guys found?
Teacher, I know.
Tell me.
5½.
I want it to the nearest 4th. So if it's to the nearest 4th, it's
4½.
I don't want a half. I want 4th.
4th. It's randomly.
So is it close to the 5/4?
Yeah.
Okay. So the answer here would be 5/4. Very good one. And yes, and are you using a ruler?
Wait, I'm just
Fourth, and I need to write fourth because they asked for nearest fourth inch.
Teacher, but I didn't understand in your own.
So on your own, you need to measure each line. So you need to measure this line, this line, this line, and for example here, when I measure the first line, I'm going to use my measuring tape. The first line is half.
How?
So because the first line is half, first of all, I need to put the numbers here, right? So I have 0, half, or I'm going to write it on the lines. So I have 0, half, wait, what's the longest one? Give me a second. Before you write it, let me check what the longest one is. Okay, it's 3. So 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, and 3, right? So the first one was half, so I will put X because the first one is half, okay? So now measure the second one and tell your friends where to put the X.
Teacher?
Yes?
Teacher?
Yes?
And the third one, I didn't understand it. 1 and 1? Oh, 1.
1.5. Okay, I'm going to visit someone else to help them. Good luck, guys. What are you guys doing?